But it does not authorize you to spend the taxpayers' money on anything that just makes you feel good. There are people that have devastation and fires and problems all over the country that you don't know about. They're not going to get any money. And it becomes very selective, choosing who gets the money, who doesn't get the money. And after they argue, or not argue, but discuss this for a while, he says, my understanding of the Constitution must be different than yours. And Davy Crockett said, you can't deny that these people were in need. And Mr. Bunn says, that's not the point. I don't deny that it was a worthy cause and these people were in need. But all of the Congress members could have reached in their own pocket and given all that they wanted to help pay those people to rebuild. And of course, 20,000 went a lot farther in 1830 than it does in 2010. But they're certainly free to give all of their money away to help those people in need. Plus, when the government steps in, you are taking the responsibility away from their family, from their church, from their neighbors, from other people in that community who want to take an interest in one another. And they no longer have any, they're no longer impelled or feel compelled to help because the government's going to do it for them. I read you the statistics last week about the California food stamp program. 75% of the people on that program are single mother households, and something like 40% or 45% have been, have no high school education, and then another 15% of those who are on the program have been on it for 5 years or more. They have no incentive to get off the program. Why should they go get a job? They're getting just enough from the government to feed themselves, keep a roof over their heads each month. And so they're just docile and passive enough. They've been drugged by the government, keeping them in that state so they don't go out looking for a job. There ought to be a stigma attached to someone living that way. I thank the Lord we live in a country that has enough. It can provide for folks in genuine need, but some people are not in genuine need, and we just make wards of the state out of them. Everybody else has to pay for it. But and the government has all these rules and checks and hoops you have to leap through in order to qualify for assistance that certain groups tend to always qualify and other groups don't qualify. I was out of work one time and I was having a hard time finding a job. And we actually went to the health department or the county welfare office and asked if we could get help with AFDC or food stamps until I found another job. We came back from Florida. And the one stipulation was if you own more than $1,000 worth of personal property, you don't qualify. Well, my car was worth, $5,000 at least at that time. You own a car that's worth more than $1,000, you don't qualify. Well, how am I going to get around to look for a job? You penalize me for having a car so I can go get a job, but it's intended to keep you poor and on the system and going through life with your hand out. These people come across the Mexican border, they come across the border hand out first. They're not coming here to work, they're coming to work the system. I realize that's politically incorrect, and just put it on the internet anyway. But people watching need to know what's happening here in California and here in the United States. So, back to our text, Proverbs 11, verses 24, 25, 26. Verse 25 says, the liberal soul shall be made fat. Liberal is akin to the word liberty. Liberty means the freedom to do what's right, without being coerced, without the government having to look over your shoulder and scrutinize and monitor your every move and criticize everything you do wrong. That means the freedom to do right on your own without the government having to monitor you, watch you, treat you like you are capable of doing this on your own without their watchful eye. There was an article in the newspaper last week, and I brought this to everyone's attention on Wednesday in Bible study. California has this First Five campaign, and it's, I guess, the first 5 years of life. It's supposed to provide food and make sure medical needs and clothing, all these things are provided for kids 5 years old and under. and also steer people to put their kids in the state-run daycare center at an earlier and earlier age. And it depends upon high prices for cigarettes, and that extra money from cigarette sales goes to fund these Healthy Kids programs. The government's always contradicting itself. They say we got to get people to stop smoking. Well, if they stop smoking, how are you going to fund this program over here? But nevertheless, San Bernardino had a program that went beyond the 5 years, and 6-year-olds would provide daycare, watching, and supervision of kids 6 years old. And the person running it said, the state has withheld funds for our 6-year-old and up program, and we don't know what we're going to do. We don't have the money to pay for this, and we don't trust just giving the money to private family members who are watching the kids, because those family members aren't licensed. She said, in other words, you apply for it, you get the money, even though the kid's going to be staying at grandma's house in the afternoon while mom's at work. The program, is set up so that grandma can get at least a few bucks to help pay for afternoon snack or food to feed her own grandkids. First of all, a grandma that would resort to that and wouldn't just make a meal for her own grandkids out of love. I don't want to send any kid to that kind of grandma. But secondly, they say that we can't trust the family members because they're not licensed. We don't want to spend money on people without the proper credentials. Are you kidding me? You mean a loved one, a family member, a grandma, or grandpa is going to mistreat their own children? Most of the time when a kid's abused, it's the school teacher that's having an affair with the kid, remember? Or the local Catholic priest is molesting them, or whatever. Or their PE coach, or somebody at school. Usually it's somebody else, not a family member, that abuses children. But they say, the wording of that representative in the newspaper it made me angry. I'm getting angry just recalling it to you. That someone would have that opinion of family members and their lack of know-how, their inability to watch and safely protect their own children because they're not licensed by the state. Good. And the idea is to get control of children at earlier and earlier age. Get them enrolled in daycare sooner than later. 4 years old, if it's good at 4 years old, probably better at 3 years old. Sign them up and let the state start raising them from the very beginning. Most people have already advocated their control and their raising their responsibilities to the state. They expect the school teacher, they expect the administrator, the public employees to do the raising, to do the disciplining, to do the feeding, to do everything else for the kid. And mom and dad bear very little responsibility. At least they've sort of copped out of it, gotten themselves out of it. But liberal means, like liberty, the freedom to do what's right without being watched. And the liberal soul shall be made fat, it says, the one that gives out of the goodness of their heart. They have a desire to do right, like we mentioned back in verse 23. It also says, he that watereth, in verse 25. It's the idea that you give a cold drink of water to someone who's thirsty, and the cold drink will be given to you if you happen to be thirsty. And verse 26, and we'll conclude here at verse 26. He that withholdeth corn, the people shall curse him, but blessing shall be upon the head of him that selleth it. The poor always despise the rich if they don't think the rich are spending the money where the poor want them to spend it. They always want to tell the rich guy what to do with his wealth. And a guy that spends no money on charitable ventures or helping other people, even though he's got a lot to spend, he's only looking to make more for himself, he's going to have the resentment of the masses, the resentment of poor people. And that's the way of the world. But he that selleth corn shall be blessed. Joseph, of course, was a great example of that. He provided for the people in Egypt during 7 years of famine. And goes down in history, one of the wisest men of the Old Testament. All right, we've gone longer than I